Welcome to School Your Soul, where we interview some of the wisest people on the planet, exploring ideas that nourish your mind, body, and spirit. It's education for your soul, and I'm your host, Sarah Cordial. Friends, welcome to Season 3 of School Your Soul. Man, it has been way too long. Since the last season, I gave birth to the most beautiful baby boy, Jackson James Cordial. He has brought more joy and love to my heart than I even knew was possible. Rory and I are just enamored with this little guy. He's been such an incredible guru to learn from every day and just the best bud to be quarantined with. Speaking of quarantining, what a crazy time in the world right now. I hope everyone is staying safe and healthy. I know the stress and uncertainty and fear that can come up at a time like this, and it can be really triggering, which I think makes it vital for us to be taking the time to consume empowering, uplifting content to really help our body, spirit, and mind recharge. So I hope I can provide a little of that to you here, which brings me to our guest today, Dave Phillips. Dave Phillips is an executive mentor for business leaders who are seeking an authentic life purpose. We're talking powerhouses like Richard Branson here. He's also a superstar athlete. He was a member and coach of Canada's national freestyle ski team, a stuntman, and a professional ski show performer. Phillips broke 2 Guinness World Records for ski duration, snow skiing for 83 hours and 17 minutes, and water skiing for 57 hours and over 1,300 miles. Phillips is an entrepreneur, columnist, talk show host, and the author of 3 Big Questions, a book that helps everyone to answer critical questions about purpose, mission, and vision. In today's show, we discuss how we can discover our purpose, vision, and mission in life, why having a purpose in your life even matters, how we can begin to answer the question, who am I? How determining our core virtues can guide us in our life, why different personalities need different spiritual practices, what Dave believes to be the closest thing to a marriage guarantee, and much more. I think you guys are going to love this episode. Enjoy. This episode is brought to you by The Relationship Reboot. Guys, I put together a 6-week course distilling down the wisdom I've learned studying integrative body psychotherapy for 3 years, interviewing experts, reading tons of books, and doing my own work with my husband. And it's basically the abridged version of the stuff that was the most effective in my own life and relationship. With us all at home spending extra time with our partners, or perhaps wanting to foster different relationships in the future, I think it's a perfect time to really dedicate some energy to deepening connection. Each week, you'll receive an email with a video module and workbook, which will help you solidify the teachings. The course is geared to allow you to reflect, recharge, reprogram, and reconnect. It usually costs $97, but with the potential of financial stress, I've slashed the price to $27. That's $4.50 a week, so I think it's a pretty great deal. To check it out, go to schoolyoursoul.com/store/therelationshipreboot. I'll also put the link in the show notes. Let's just get straight into it. Welcome to the show, Dave. I'm so glad to have you here.
Sarah. It's a pleasure.
I know we're all busy, and this is kind of a unique time, so I feel like I'm getting lucky getting a little extra time with you. Are you guys are home? You're in Vancouver. You said your kids.
We are home in Vancouver. We live in the ocean, so we've been fortunate that we even a couple of whales even came by the other day, which is rare because it's usually really busy up where we are, and it was just magical. I mean, so many good things are happening during this time. You know, I mean, so many difficult things, I get that, but at the same time, there's so many great things that are happening as well.
Especially for the environment, it seems.
Oh, I got to tell you, I think I was talking to people in Hong Kong, and they said, we could see the sky. There's a sky up there.
Yep. Same in LA. I mean, it always, when I check my weather, it always says the air quality, and it has never said good since I've lived here until now, which is crazy.
It's a whole new world.
Yes.
It's in lots of ways. So I'm hoping that we're going to learn lessons from this. You know, there's been a time when people are asking the question like, what's really important to me?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to get into that. First off, a little bit of our backstory is we met through Blake Mykoski at a company called Made For, which we can also talk about later. Had a meeting, and you were kind of spearheading, leading this meeting, and I was very inspired by your message and the way you communicated it and your talk on purpose. And it's very much been a part of my life since I was very young, kind of seeking, why am I here? What is my purpose? What's it all about? So it really felt like the questions that you were pointing towards were very familiar to me, and very cool to see them in the format that you have in this book, which I'd like to talk about later. But first, we were just kind of talking about it, but we're in this unprecedented time in history with COVID-19 and this pandemic. And as you know, we mentioned, there's so much loss and suffering and anxiety and stress, and there's negative things that come with it, and there's also these beautiful things that have come as well. And on your website, actually, there was a quote that really resonated with me, that I think that would really help a lot of people. So I want to read it real quick. You say, the greatest task for any person is to find meaning in his or her life. Viktor Frankl, who was a Holocaust survivor, saw 3 possible sources for meaning: in work, doing something significant; in love, caring for another person; and in courage during difficult times. Suffering in and of itself is meaningless. We give our suffering meaning by the way in which we respond to it. Forces beyond your control can take away everything you possess except one thing: your freedom to choose how you will respond to the situation. You cannot control what happens to you in life, but you can always control what you feel and do about what happens to you.
Thank you. I needed that reminder. Isn't that, I love Viktor Frankl.
So beautiful.
He just, I get goosebumps as you read the quote because, there's a lot in there, actually.
A lot.
There's a lot in there. But boy, oh boy, probably the greatest gift we've ever been given is choice. We have choice. Very powerful, I mean, if there was one thing that I could be reminded of every day, it's that, Dave, you have choice.
Yes.
You have choice. There's so many things we actually get to choose.
Yes.
I go, oh boy, how about that?
And it's so much easier said than done sometimes. So my question for you is, are there ways that we can consciously shift our perspective at a time? Like, have you found techniques that really help you kind of say, like, I mean, you naturally seem like you're looking at the situation and you're saying, oh, here are the silver linings. Here are these positive things. I mean, is that just innately who you are? Or is this something that we can all kind of learn to do more of?
Oh boy, yes, absolutely. You can all learn. I'm not innately like that. It was a lot of work. I mean, where do we start the story, right? I mean, we all have a story of struggling with, why the heck am I here on the planet? Like, what could this thing possibly be all about? I mean, why do I even bother doing what I do? Money? Like, I guess that's supposed to make me happy. And then we get a whole bunch of it and go, oh, you know what? That's maybe not such a great deal. Right?
Yeah.
And, who was it that said, we spend our entire lives indefinitely preparing to live? Right? And okay, well, hang on just a second. Why is it that we're preparing to live? How is it that we can live and be present now? So, if we take a look broadly at the self-development world and at the things that we're bombarded with on a daily basis, you think of it as this continuum. At this end, we have a series of techniques and quick tips that will help us. For example, being grateful. I mean, that's fantastic. It rewires your brain. It's fabulous, right? It's a technique. It's quick. It's snappy. It works, right? Fabulous. Okay, so that's a quick tip, a technique. It's something that works. Unfortunately, most of our motivational structures or systems that are trying to trigger our motivational structures are set up over here, right? And so really, there's this whole other end of the continuum. So if we back up from techniques and activities, we back up to our values and our identity. And now all of a sudden we start taking a look, okay, well, at the other end of the continuum is actually me. This is a cool technique over here, but who am I? Like, what's actually important to me? Like, okay, if being grateful is something that's important over here, what am I grateful for? Why am I grateful for that? What is actually important to me? And so there's this whole other end of the continuum that we drop down into. And to be honest, when I wrote the book, Three Big Questions, I honestly thought nobody really would want to read it. Unfortunately, I was, or fortunately, I was wrong. But it's a very interesting thing that, we are set up in our culture around fixing this and quick techniques, rather than drilling down and saying, what is the identity which is going to precede my activity? All right. And so I kind of spent my life really drawing people to this place where they can, talk about things like purpose and meaning without having to read Aristotle's Republic, which is about 2,000 pages, by the way. And without getting dragged through the mud, right? Like, what is something for our time that can actually get people thinking seriously about who they are, what's really important, that will connect to daily life.
So if we're living within that place of purpose and value and meaning, then you're saying, like, when we encounter suffering or difficult things in our lives, we are able to that naturally comes through us to be kind of more present for it, or to meet it more with a better perspective?
Sure. One of the broad objectives of life, really, for you and Rory, for Jax, is to build a resiliency to the stresses that will come against you during the course of your life and your marriage and the real places that we live every day. Because, in marriage, like, stuff happens, real hard things. Yes. I mean, people die, and we have coronaviruses come along, and we have difficulty with relationships and with jobs and with economics. And, life is actually designed to be difficult. It's the only way we actually get better. Yet we're really seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, in the way that we live our life. And we don't actually embrace and build and consistently build resiliency to that pain. And there's a foundation to this that really people have been talking about for thousands of years. So it's not like it's a mystery. It's not like this hasn't been bench tested. Right? Yeah. But what is that? What is that pathway that starts over here? That starts that. What are those practices that we can do? And this is largely what Made For is about. And what I just love about the program is it's practical, and it encourages people in their habits and their daily activities, and to burn these habits in slowly and consistently over time, but only a 30-day window. If you there's an old saying, you can build habits are built in 21 days, I think. And if you want a lifetime habit, it takes 63 days, depending on passion, intention, and repetition, right? And so if you do something consistently for 21 days, chances are pretty good you're going to make a habit, right? And if you do it even more than that, then all of a sudden these habits become characteristics. The characteristics then become part of your character. Your character then is the foundation to a life well lived, to a resiliency, a resilient character that when something comes along, you can manage through it. Sorry, I kind of get excited about this stuff.
I love it. I love it. I love that passion. I guess since we're talking about Made For, we should give people a little bit of background of what Made For is. Can you give like the one-liner or like the brief?
There's these remarkable people who've come together. I think world-class resources. Honestly, I am so humbled even to be in the presence of these folks. They have done such remarkable things in their lives. And are making such an incredible contribution from academics, from Rory, from this world of movement, and and they've come together to say, what is the absolute best science that we can give people and the quickest delivery system, that they could get one package a month for 10 months consistently to actually reshape their life. I'm telling you, in the mentoring and the coaching work that I've done for the last 25 years, if I could get people to do that, life would dramatically change for them. This program is designed, not only does it have incredible expertise, but it has a practical implementation. So that's kind of what Made For is. But it talks about the simple stuff, the big things of life, about hydration, about movement, about sleep. I mean,
Yeah.
Like I say, I'm pretty excited about it because it really it shakes people to the core. It shapes their character, and it changes their life for the long haul if they continue to do it.
Yeah, and all the steps are so actionable and reasonable and small. It's not, you're not asking so much. It's just a little teeny step every day for that month. You're focusing on one thing, and it just feels like with our busy lives, it's something that's not asking too much, and yet the impact is profound.
Right. It's so when you ask me about Made For, you kind of step on a landmine, right? I'm pretty excited about what could happen with this. And if people can even just share it with their friends and set up accountability partners and small groups of people that can be socially distant that can talk through and work through these things, it's remarkable what can happen in community as you start to encourage one another.
Yes, we'll provide a link for everybody in the show notes and on my website, so you can go straight to Made For and sign up. I mean, it's pretty incredible. Rory, we're getting the packages now and kind of taking part in it, so it's fun. Okay, so your book, 3 Big Questions. I've been kind of looking through it. I think it's so cool. I think one of the things I love about it is, I mean, the questions that you're asking in this book are so huge, and yet you make it seem much more attainable by kind of providing these multiple choice. I mean, for me, having this list of potential values or virtues, that it just makes you take action. Or for me, it made me take action faster. It was like, oh, I can see this right now. It made it just like the momentum keep going, and it felt very actionable again, kind of like Made For. So let's talk a little bit about this book, because I think it's very powerful. First, I mean, the book is really calling to help people reveal their purpose and the vision of their life and the mission of their life, and these really huge questions, right? And when I look at your life expression, you've kind of had many different manifestations of your expression. It seems you're an entrepreneur, you're a columnist, talk show host, author, member and coach of Canada's national freestyle ski team, a stuntman, a professional ski show performer. You've broken 2 Guinness World Records for ski duration. I mean, like, you've done a lot of different things that have been incredible, right? At what point did you discover your purpose?
It's usually not a moment, to be honest. Okay. It's usually a process. But I think one of the pivotal moments of purpose for me happened actually in the middle of the water ski marathon. Because I'm not sure if you've ever water skied 800 miles before. Most people haven't.
I have not.
But trust me, at about 300 miles, everything starts to hurt. At 800 miles, it seems impossible. And we're supposed to go to 1,337, which was the Guinness World Record. So at 800, everybody tries to break it. Something happens, or at 800, I can tell you what happens. It becomes impossible. You get to a point where you take a look deep inside, and remember, you have 26 bones in each one of your feet. Each one of those bones is connected by ligaments and muscles and all that. Rory tell you all about this. And those muscles and bones are getting pounded like this, right? And after about 30 or 40,000 of those, you really start to lose your sense of humor, right? And so, you're in an enormous amount of pain. And unfortunately, it's pain that triggers most of us in our lives, right? We don't do anything hard or anything that will press us to a higher place until something's a little bit difficult. And so that was my slap up the side of the head because I asked myself a very interesting question at that moment. So what do you think that question might be, Sarah?
Why?
Why? Everybody guesses the question. Yeah, so I asked myself the question, why? Why am I doing this, right? And so I go, well, break the Guinness World Record. And then I go, no, not big enough. Let somebody else break it. Well, the second why question was, why is it important to break the Guinness World Record? Well, to raise money for cystic fibrosis. Nope, write him a check. That's not good enough either. Okay, well, why is it important actually for to raise money for cystic fibrosis? And so you start asking those questions, and all of a sudden, after 3 or 4 of those drilling down, all of a sudden, and I got to tell you, it's the strangest thing in the world. My mind drifted back to the beach, to these two little girls, Joan and Allison. They both had cystic fibrosis, and I had 2 little kids at the time. Who were at home while I was out doing this crazy thing. and so, you get drifting back to the beach and you realize, what, Walter and Lisa, their parents, that morning had to hang them upside down and pound their backs to get the fluid out of their lungs so they could breathe, and feed them handfuls of enzymes so that they could digest their food for the day. I mean, when I get goosebumps as I'm telling you the story. It's the craziest thing all these years later, right? But when I realized that the reason that I was there, my why for that event, had to do with giving another breath of life to these 2 little girls. Like, really, really simple. Could I help those girls breathe another breath, have another moment of life, do something to help them in their dire circumstance? And when I realized that was actually the reason that I was there, Sarah, I'm sorry, I can't explain what happened at that moment. And it's not a big explosion, but somehow there was a bump that I went over, and the impossible, and please believe me, it was the closest thing to impossible I've ever experienced. I've done a lot of difficult things in my life, but somehow that crossed over to possible. And somehow I thought, I can hang on for another few minutes. Not for another 400 miles, because I couldn't even think that thought. I was so desperate. But I can hang on for another few minutes for those girls. And, Sarah, if you were there with me and we had that conversation out on the water, you would have hung on to the rope with me. You would have done it if you realized, if you really came down to, we're doing this to save those little girls' lives if we can.
Yeah.
Right? And at some point, we get to this place where we dig down to something that is really important to us, right? Individually to us. And so that got me through 1,337 and a half crazy, stupid miles to break this Guinness World Record. And like, I'm so unimpressed. Like, it's people say, oh, you must have found out actually how wonderful you were as an athlete and all those. Are you kidding? We found out how weak we were. We found out how much we needed other people. We needed to support people, the 12 boat drivers, the 60 volunteers, the people who delivered us food and regassed the boats. And I mean, we are absolutely, at the same time as this world, we realize we need one another to do anything significant in life.
Yes.
And so the big lessons, I'm not at the center of the universe. There's a reason for my life. That reason largely for me comes in service. And so now if that event told me something about I need a purpose for that event, how about for my life? Right? Why am I here on the planet? I mean, why did I do that event is actually a different question, right, than why am I here on the planet? So in other words, there's purpose for the event, which is purposeful, but it's not the purpose for my life. It's not the purpose for my life to do a bunch of water ski events and raise a bunch of money for charity. But the purpose for my life is certainly to be the kind of person who can.
Yes.
And so how do we have that discussion, right? And so I'm after this event, I'm going, okay, that shook my world, like that impossible to possible. in a moment. Let me sort this thing out, right? And so I started walking down this pathway, and I saw, as we did this, I looked at history. I looked at all the people of history and say, how did they think about this? What did they do? What did they, what has everybody sort of said over time? I'm not smart enough to tell people what the purpose for their life is, but I think history and all the smart people of history have something really, really great to say about that.
Yes.
So sorry, am I going on and on?
No,
again?
you're fine. You're fine. I'll just to make it clear, the first of the three big questions is, what is my purpose for living? Since we're gonna kind of head in that direction, it sounds like. So kind of what you've been saying, which also resonates with me, is really the importance of getting to know ourselves, and how often we focus on getting to know our family members and our friends, hopefully, and have these meaningful connections. But how much time are we actually spending like asking ourselves these questions, which is another thing that's so powerful about this book is you're really just spending time with yourself and getting to know yourself, which should be our primary relationship in our life, right? And something that I think we often can forget about. But anyway, that was just more of a tangent. So what is my purpose for living?
Good statement.
So tell me, why do you think it's important for us to have a purpose? Like, how is that going to enhance our life?
Everybody asks sooner or later. They want to know that their life means something.
Yes.
People want to know that their life means something. And if they don't ask the questions in earnest, then they actually wake up when they're 70 years old and realize that I actually treated the purpose for my life acquiring things. And you know what? That is not actually very satisfying. Yeah. I mean, I'm fast forwarding the tape here for you, but basically, I have seen this movie 1,000 times with 1,000 or more people that I've had these conversations with. And they just simply tell you, like, yeah, all the stuff in the world is not going to make a difference. It was how I did that journey that made the difference. It was who I was. It was the identity that I had that preceded the activity that I did. Mm. And so, of course, that begs another big question. It's the who am I? Like, what's the purpose for my life? And in fact, if we ask that big question, what's the purpose for my life? There's another question. Pardon me. There's another question you actually have to ask. Is the purpose for my life to do something or to be someone? It's kind of a big question. Right? Yeah. So if we talked about it long enough, and we talked about history, we would determine that the purpose for your life is actually to be someone. Now, let me just frame that a little bit for you, because I believe the life purpose puzzle has 3 pieces. Okay. Right? This first piece, though, is the purpose for our lives really to be someone. That is the thing that gives purpose and meaning to the work that we do. The whole world is telling you the purpose for my life is to do something.
Yes.
Sorry, it's purposeful, but it's not the purpose for your life. The purpose for your life is to first be someone who would then go and do those wonderful things that then draws us, which is the mission, right? The next thing, and different people will use different words, so please just understand the context. And please, Sarah, don't think I got this right. I'm boiling down all of human history, and I'm trying to give people a pathway. A reductionist, I hate reductionist oversimplification, but I know that I'm doing it with 3 big questions, right? But I'm trying to give people a starting place for this pathway that boils down all of human history, yet gives you manageable chunks to put together a meaningful life that really works.
Yes.
That's practical, highly practical, and it's not super ethereal.
Yes.
It just this is the kind of the center of the starting place for these 3 conversations. Mm-hmm. That's what the book is for. So back to our 2 questions. Is it to do something or to be someone? So to be someone.
Yeah. So we want to be someone. So then my question I was going to follow up with, which I now think I know the answer, is can your purpose change But if your purpose is essentially your beingness, then I assume it does not change. So
Not really.
It's the same. So your purpose is this underlying thing that's like the essence of who you are that never falters or changes.
Essentially, that's true. Some people will change the words so that it feels a little better over time, but the core sense of self and meaning, it really doesn't change that much over time.
Okay, and then but your mission. Oops, hold on. But your mission and vision, they could potentially change, I would assume, like in your evolution, maybe?
Sure, yeah. As you grow with age and education and experience, access to resources and so on, networks and whatnot, sure, that may evolve and change over time. But the big piece, the most important piece, is to understand yourself. Yes. Now, the real benefit to understanding yourself is that you can have more honest conversations about what you should do. So it's very likely that you will choose well here.
Yes.
Right? What you do. But understanding who you are first, that's the first conversation, and that's the first place of exploration.
Okay.
I'll give you practical exercise if you like.
Yes, please. Go ahead. Love that.
Well, okay, so if we, again, reductionist oversimplification, take a look down through history and say, okay, well, now we're talking about identity. We're talking about who we are. So again, don't want to read Aristotle's Republic. How do I decide who I am? Well, okay, so if you take a look, there are, in the whole big world of values, there are actually, I break them into three categories, actually. In the book, there's two. Now I'm doing three. There are identity values.
Okay.
There are competency or strength values. And then there are activity values. Okay, so
what happened to virtues?
The virtues are the identity values.
Okay,
so if we take a look around, there's about probably somewhere between 15 and 20 virtues that everybody on the planet, everywhere in history, all over the planet, everybody's essentially agreed. These are all good things. We all want to be loving and just and good and humble and gracious. Everybody, there's a list, you've seen them in the book. And this is the interesting thing, right? Like it's such a simple yet profound thing that everybody on the planet is kind of lines up with these central concepts. Now,
okay, should I tell you what my three were? Does that help us?
Oh, that would help me a lot.
Okay, so mine were hope, wisdom, and goodness.
Hope, wisdom, and goodness.
That's from the book. I'm not sure if it's similar to what you're doing now, but...
Yes, that's absolutely lovely, right? Because hope... sorry, I'm going to write them down because I'll refer back to them. That was hope, goodness...
And wisdom.
And wisdom. Yeah. So I could actually talk about all three of those for a very long time. Okay. I won't, but I could. Well, the reason these things are so important is because they have actually created the foundation of meaning in our culture and our civilization since the beginning of recorded history. Right? Now, there's about 18. I think we need 3 to focus on because that becomes a starting place.
Okay.
And sometimes less. I mean, I've been through these conversations with my daughter many times. And she, after we did an evening together, this was a couple of years ago, she's 25 now, so she would have been 22 or 23. She said to me after this evening function she'd attended, "Dad, so do you want to know the purpose for my life?" Well, yeah, I do, dear. I really want to know that. And she paused for a minute and she said, "The purpose for my life is to be a reflection of all that's good." Right?
That's beautiful. That's similar to what I wrote. That's interesting.
Yeah, it really is, right? Because she, of all the things we've talked about her whole life, she boiled it down and she said, this is the starting place. And to be a reflection of all that's good, I also have to be loving, and I have to grow in this sense of humility and grace and courage. to engage these things, to be wise and good and hopeful, right?
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, all of the other virtues come to light, and they fill in the foundation underneath this leading cast. For some, and like I say, for some people, they will boil it down to one, and others will do more. I asked the question to Richard Branson. I said, well, what's the purpose for your life? And he's not a private client, so I don't mind telling a story. I was just having dinner with him one night, and I said, so Richard, why do you think you're here on the planet? And I was very surprised at how quickly he answered, and what he said, and just the level of connection and sincerity that he had when he said it. There's such a sense of someone you get in that moment. And he said, love. And I thought, I wrote the book. That was so much better than anything I've written. And you just said it in one word, Richard. But he had such a grounded sense that all of the airlines and the record labels and all the things he's trying to do in the world, whether you agree with him on all the positions or not, is almost irrelevant at this moment. But rather, it was the sense that he does this because it is his authentic expression of love for the world. Right? And for my daughter, for her authentic expression of goodness in the world. She's working for a group called Plastic Bank now because to be good, she wants to get plastic off the planet. She thinks it's going to be a terrible thing. We all agree. She's just doing so as a result, she's going to do what she can with that deep sense of goodness that rests on her soul. And, in the same way for you, Sarah, as you think about how is it that I can extend my goodness, that deep sense of purpose to be that good person, I can have podcasts and I can raise my son in this way that reflects goodness and do so in my marriage and my relationships and my community, right? Everything rests upon that foundation of what I've called purpose, right? Because is that going to change probably between now and the time you're 100 years old?
No.
Sorry to be so pessimistic. I'm going to say 100. I'm thinking maybe 110 for you and Rory. But
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it would change. So do we use those virtues? We take these virtues, and is that helping us to write my purpose statement? Are they just the guideposts, like, oh, I now see that hope, wisdom, and goodness are a part of my soul and a part of my expression, and I really value them, and they feel like they're a big part of me, so that just helps guide me in understanding what my purpose statement would be?
Sure. So if you wanted to do the quick and dirty version of purpose for your life,
yes,
go through the list, boil it down, put a check mark beside every one you like, and then underline your top 5 or 6 or 7, and then circle your top 3. You get 3.
Yep.
Probably not too big a reach to say the purpose for my life is to be a person of hope, of goodness, and wisdom.
Okay.
It's probably pretty close. So if you want to drill that down, and unfortunately, the work of life purpose comes with a little bit of work.
Yes.
Right? So the first exercise that I recommend people do is once they boil it down to their top 3, I say take that, let's just say hope. And so, Sarah, for you, how did hope show up in your past? How did it show up when you were young? So for me, for example, humility is one of my central virtues. So when I was a young hotshot athlete, I really thought I was something. I read Start Press. You show up in the newspaper, on television, and you think you're really something, right? And I was definitely on the side of arrogant prick, right? And it's embarrassing even to say it out loud now, right? Because you recognize how out of sync I was probably at that point for who I want to be. So if I was to journal, it would probably say something like that. In my past, in my years ago, that might have been how that virtue would have shown up. Today, how does that show up? Well, it shows up as something that I think about often because I sometimes will have a little more confidence than maybe is even the right thing to have. You know, that guy that's not always right but never in doubt. Uh, and so, you know, I always want to. It's something that I always want to work on. You know, who do I want to? So that's the present.
Okay.
So the future, what's the future look like? Well, the future looks like, you know, Jim Houston, who was a contemporary of C.S. Lewis and J.R. Tolkien, who wrote, you know, I don't know if you read all the trilogies and the Narnias and all that stuff, but the remarkable human beings. He was a contemporary of them, and he's written a bunch of books himself. But when I sit with him, he says, "Oh, Dave, it's so good to see you. Thank you for coming. No, no, please let me buy lunch." I'm going like, I don't feel like there's another human being on the planet. He has such a deep sense of humility. He's 97 years old.
Oh, wow.
Right? He is an optimist, too. He has booked a speaking engagement on his 100th birthday.
Oh, that's awesome.
But a remarkable guy, but a picture of humility. That's what I want to be. I want to be this person who truly has a deep sense of engagement in the world, but yet a loss of this over-reliance on this sense of self and ego.
Okay.
And so you see, as I do that work, all of a sudden it gives me a clearer picture who I've been, who I am, and where I'm headed.
I love that.
Now all of a sudden you start to have a much deeper sense of what that core important part of character actually is. And so this is the work of courage. This, or which courage and mine would be, would be courage, would be humility, would be grace, right? And again, talk about all those for a very long time. Okay. But I will extend and dig into that character in a way that is kind of similar to what you would do, but I would maybe express that a little bit differently in my mission, based on my signature strengths and behaviorally how I've been put together, and my sort of competency and strength values and my activity values. So, you know, all of those things would go off up there, but this first piece around purpose.
Okay, so I could sit here and talk to you all day, but I'll try to keep us on task.
Sorry, good. Please do.
The second question then, so the first question is, what is my purpose for living? And then you go into what will be my mission in this life. And that you're kind of talking about the activities that are important to you, and gifts and passions and
right.
and all these things, and all these different kind of expressions of how this might show up in your life, right?
Right. And so we have done, in the book, we've done these 10 different areas of, and all of these, we're trying to do kind of, what's your mission by multiple choice, to give people a starting place for this. And so we take a look at these big areas of life and we say, how do we boil that down to your top three for each of those areas? Because it's from that top three, all those top three lists, that you're very likely to come down and go, oh, you know what? The purpose for my life is to do this. It's to speak and lead, to draw people to a place of living a purpose-filled, mission-driven, vision-directed, virtuous life. You can actually boil it down to this little statement of under 15 words, and it provides remarkable clarity.
I love that. And then the question 3 is, what will be the vision for my life? Talk to me about then the vision.
Sure. So in 1995, Jim Collins, the Good to Great guy, and Jerry Porsche wrote this remarkable article called Truly Visionary Companies. And they said there that truly visionary companies have outperformed the stock market by a factor of 12 since 1925. Amazing, right? Wow. So everybody runs off and writes a vision statement for their business, for their life, right? So the problem with that is that if you do not have a clear mission and a sense of purpose underneath that, even for a business, then the vision statement ends up being a goal, maybe a big, hairy, audacious goal, but a goal nonetheless. And if you call your goals the purpose for your life, when you achieve your goals, you lose your purpose. And so a vision must be crafted within the context of understanding the sense of purpose and mission. Because it's only that foundation that will allow you to even start having the visionary conversation. And And so then we have to define the context around vision. So is my vision, most people will come upon vision. I'll just tell you how they come upon it. They come on it two different ways. One is what I call the spontaneous eruption, where they just one day will be going along and go, oh, it's this, right? Other people will take purpose and mission and have this linear projection and go, well, more of that. Okay, so those are the two pathways that I most often see with vision. In either case, though, they've done the work around purpose and mission first. Okay. Because when you talk about vision, you're now going into an irrational state. It's something that doesn't yet exist. We live our whole life rationally. It's irrational. It's not here. It's something we are fabricating, we're creating, we're looking to the future, and we are saying, that's where I want to go. You don't know who you are first. Where you're going is going to change, and you want it to change a little less if you can.
Yeah.
So now I'm going on and on. I talk about vision. I get really excited about vision.
I love it. I love your enthusiasm. I think that's so important with something you're passionate about. I mean, that was another characteristic that I really value. Okay, so then we have, I'm excited to do this work myself, but we go through the book, we clarify all this information, we have different statements. Then how are we interacting with this information that we've uncovered through this book? Are we having it on our wall? Are we reading it every morning? Are we looking at it every once in a while? Like, where is it in our life?
Yeah, great question. Different people will do different things. Some people take we have a little card actually in the book, the printed version of the book, and people will actually write their statements on there and carry it around on their wallets. People walk up to me like 10 years later with these books that are falling to pieces, and and this card that's just shredded in their wallets, right? You pull it out and they say, here, do you see this? This has changed my life. I mean, I can't even tell you about the stories. Now, I've been doing this a long time now, and I mean, the process, I think, has gotten better over time. But the stories, when people come to me and they say, hi, I know I haven't talked to you in like 10 years, Dave, but I just want you to know that a little bit of stuff that we did around values, it changed everything. It changed my life, changed my marriage, that got back together again, changed my business, and now I want you to come back and talk to my group about it. I mean,
that's amazing.
If it only happened once, it would be worthwhile, right? Yeah. But to me, and it's not me that's doing that, this is simply all of history, Sarah. It's all of history is drawing us to this pathway. I'm just trying to accelerate that for people.
Yeah. Do you feel like some people who write books say that it kind of like came through them? Do you feel like, was that your experience with this at all?
I'm not even sure it came. Yes,
like you were like a vessel for this wisdom.
Yeah, it was just like it happened, and I happened to be writing it. It was almost like it was going on over there. It's I wrote it honestly, think nobody would want to read it. It was pushing its way through me.
Wow. So for realistically, obviously, people have families to support, and if you read this book and you go through and you find, I'm not doing at all what I'm supposed to be doing, or I'm in the complete wrong place, it can seem almost like a luxury to just say, oh, just follow your purpose. And I mean, I'm so guilty of this because this is how I talk and I love it. But for the people who kind of think like, hey, like I've got a family to support, I can't just quit my job and go, meditate all day, or go start writing children's books in the corner because I have to pay the bills. So how do those people meld the kind of not a fantasy, but this idea of following our purpose and our mission and the current life we have if they don't match?
I was married with 2 kids and a third on the way when all this stuff started for me. So I totally get that question. I absolutely know how hard it is. And for those people who are struggling with that, I really, really get. When the dream dies, though, so does the dreamer. Mm-hmm. If we do not know where we're going, any road will get you there, right? And at least we want to know where we're going, because it gives us a chance to start working towards that. You see, we must have the courage to dream. It's the very thing that has sustained us as humans since the beginning of recorded history. We've had the courage to dream. That's why courage is one of the virtues. It's the beginning of any step. But the first step. Remember at the beginning of the call we talked about choice. We have the choice to dream the dream. I know maybe it could be a little bit discouraging. It certainly was for me when I realized this. I'm going, oh boy, I'm here. I want to be over there. But yet that guiding light, that northern star, drew me to the future. It drew me to this place. And gradually, slowly, bit by bit, I started to work towards this future.
Okay.
And I have to tell you, it cannot happen. Please don't think about, I got to change it tomorrow. It's like made for building habits, working in a direction. Sarah, hope. Think about the power of hope in the lives of people and what that hope can do.
Yes.
I've heard people criticize hope and say, hope's not a strategy. Well, actually, hope is the very thing in our hearts that helps us believe there is a future. There is a vision that I can draw myself to, that I can get better.
Yeah.
Human change does happen. Yeah. We can get better. Life can actually get better, as desperate as it sometimes seems. And we've all been through hardship. I could talk about that for a while as well. But the point is, we have choice. We have the choice. We get to choose. And are we going to make that small choice today when we get out of bed? Or are we going to say, you know what, I'm just going to go back to sleep, and we fall in love with our beds and we take the easy choices. Easy choices, hard life. Hard choices, easy life.
That's so funny, because when I was kind of getting ready for this interview, that popped up, this idea that, you know, sometimes I feel like, gosh, it would just be so much easier if I wasn't always asking myself these deep philosophical questions, and I could just kind of go in autopilot. And of course that's not the truth, but sometimes it feels like I'm always I'm just such a seeker. I'm always like looking for like, what's the purpose? Like, why am I here? And, you know, these big things. And of course I know that's part of my essence and my truth. But I even wrote, like, gosh, it seems like it adds more pressure almost to, like, I can't just sit back and be like, oh, I'm just going to do this job that makes money, that I have to feel like I'm expressing this truest expression of myself. Yes, but ultimately, Sarah, I can't imagine any other way, right?
Let me be perfectly clear. I'm applying pressure.
I like that.
You got to step up.
Okay.
And we all have to step up in our lives, because you know what? If we shrink back, if we take the easy path, we will look back and we will be disappointed that we were not the example to our children that we had to be, that we did not make the contribution to culture that we wished we'd made, that we didn't become all we could be. You do not want to die with all the music still inside.
Yes. I know.
Try and push and fail again and again and again, and get up and keep going. And if it's hard, find people to go walk the pathway with you. Get therapists, get coaches, get friends, get community, get other people who are struggling through it, and agree that you're going to fail over and over again. Yes. And hopefully over time you will become more successful. Amazing. I've seen people do amazing things, remarkable so things that you couldn't imagine. Quick story, 2010, I'm sitting in Vancouver. I'm in the rain watching the moguls at the Olympics in Vancouver. And I'm sitting there watching the moguls, and I'm sitting with my friend John. And I had this deja vu. And the deja vu was that 25 years before 2010, John and I used to be freestyle competitors and friends together. We've been friends a long time now. We talked yesterday, actually. And John told me, he described the scene that you would have seen on television to me. He described it 25 years before it happened. He said, Dave, one day freestyle is going to be at the Olympics. And then he said the banners are going to be here, and the starting gates are going to be here, and the finish area, and the corral, and the grandstand, and that we were sitting in. I got this flush of deja vu, like goosebumps, as I sat with John, because I watched him become a freestyle competitor, become a sport administrator, become a guy who was sponsors, to become the FIS chairman for freestyle skiing for the globe. And he was the single driving force that changed history by putting a sport in the Olympics. For some, that might not be a big deal. That's a huge accomplishment.
Wow.
Right? It's a huge, but he dared to dream. He dared to dream, and he took out and he did something that most of us would think unimaginable.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's cool.
We have capacity to do these things. Now he's found this healing clay, and he is going to change medicine, and he's on his way. He is a guy who sees what's going to happen in the future.
Wow.
And we all have that.
Man, just talking now, I'm thinking that one of my virtues, I skipped over courage. And I think I want to incorporate that in and see if I can maybe manifest more of it, because I feel like part of being a sensitive person, I think it feels scary sometimes to put yourself out there and to come out. And even though I know I have this message to share, but the courage element, when I think of like the past, present, future example, maybe that's the manifestation that needs to take form in order for me to really rise to my next level and step up.
Well, let me tell you about you creative people. You creative people, we do the behavior measurements. I know who you are, right? And you have these big, long antennas that go out into the world, and ideas float around there in the universe. Because you have that sensing and that sensitive nature, you sense those ideas. They travel down your antennas into your prefrontal cortex, and then you bring these ideas to life. You manifest reality. You create something that didn't exist. You give birth to an idea, to a thought, to a piece of art in a way that other people just simply can't do. You are bringing to life what could be the future. And if you don't think that that is a courageous thing and a hard thing to do, you absolutely must have courage to do this podcast, to become a mother, to be married. These are hard things.
Yeah.
And the courage is something that will grow inside you. It will take shape and it will become fortified as you match that with action.
Yes. Okay. I feel very seen, Dave. Thank you.
I got to tell you, you people have a piece of magic that the world doesn't understand. So please, even when they don't understand you, surge ahead. We need you.
Oh, I love that. That really feels good to hear. Thank you. So, gosh, I feel like I could just sit here and talk to you all day. I just really want to be sensitive to your time. But do you have time for a couple more questions?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Yeah, absolutely. I'm good for 30 more minutes before my phone rings.
Okay. So I want to switch gears a little bit. Everybody needs to get this book. It's amazing. I'll link to this as well. And I'm going to continue working with it and get kind of clear on where I'm headed. But marriage. You've been married for a while. How long have you been married?
30 years.
30 years. What is like the short kind of version of things that have been really valuable and helpful in keeping your marriage strong?
Well, let's boil this down to something usable. If I had to say because people are looking for practical helps in their marriage and their relationships. Mm-hmm. And so I tend to be a bit of a data guy. And so if I was to boil that down, I would say that there's really one guy and his wife who have done better research on marriage than anybody on the planet. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing marriage and therapy I'm a whole life guy, right? So I've been, running businesses, doing all those other things, but I'm also trained in marriage therapy and counseling and all those sorts of things, right? And so I do, I sort of talk about everything from the boardroom to the bedroom, right? And everything in between. And so in marriage, there's so many people have so many great ideas. You have to have communication, better communication, and you have to be able to talk about feelings, and you have to be able to, right? And so, unfortunately, though, if you get stuck on one of those tracks, you get such a small part of the picture. Mm-hmm. And you kind of need this bigger picture, but with not so huge that you can't manage it, right? And so John Gottman did one thing. John and Julie Gottman did this one thing that was just remarkable. John, by the way, started this path because he couldn't keep a relationship together. He was a sociologist, a psychologist, right? He couldn't keep a relationship together, so he started doing dating. He said, let's go and see what the masters and the disasters of marriage do, right? The good ones and the bad ones. And so he determined that actually there are these 7 things that all happy couples do.
Okay.
And so he wrote a book, and the book is called The 7 Principles for Making Marriage Work. And if you won't read John's book, then Google the magic 6 hours, because the magic 6 hours is the closest thing to a marriage guarantee that you will ever have. Okay, but it's not a pie in the sky. It's like after 40 years of research, they've said that if you spend as a couple 6 hours a week doing these things in this way, and it's on 2 pages, boiled down to 2 pages, right? And the internet search may be 1, but they will tell you that if you spend these 6 hours in this way, it's the closest thing that you will be able to find to a marriage guarantee, because it covers off the central pieces of what happy, satisfied married couples do.
Okay.
But
I'll link to that for sure.
Yeah. So the book has 3 sections. First section is, these are some of the myths around marriage. The second section is, here's the things that cause divorce. Oh, by the way, criticism, contempt, stonewalling, and defensiveness. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's actually the contempt that's the big one. Do you want to know the North American signal for contempt? Watch for this.
Eye rolling?
Actually, it's eye rolling, and you have a little muscle here called the buccinator, right? So if you ever see this, that's actually contempt. You know what it is? It's character assassination. It's, how could you be so inferior to me? I am superior to you and probably most people. In fact, you could probably never, ever be as really something as I am. And how could I be so stupid as to have married somebody like you? That's basically
what that says.
What that says. So, if they yell and scream and jump up and down, don't worry so much about that.
Okay.
But if they roll their eyes and trigger the little buccinator,
be afraid. All right. Okay. So we got to check that out. When we were exchanging emails before this, I asked you parenting advice, and you said being a perfect parent will mess your kids up. Period.
Absolutely.
So just elaborate on that thought.
Well, if you teach kids that the world is perfect and ideal, and that you never lose your temper, and that you never actually have a disagreement with your spouse, do you think that sets them up for reality?
Yeah. No.
Think about how crazy this is, right? We shelter our kids from all kinds of things, and then we tell them then we try to build their self-esteem. Self-esteem is highly overrated, by the way. Sense of self and sense of connected and virtue, these are good things, right? But the sense of just feeling good about yourself without any foundation for what that goodness really is. Read Carol Dweck's book, Mindset.
Oh, so good. I love that book.
She just fantastic work, right? But essentially, praise the hard work. Don't praise the child. If the child thinks they're so wonderful and your life is perfect, and that anything that comes along that's not perfect for them is disaster, totally takes them out of the game. They have to learn that life is actually tough.
Is there an example of that?
Oh, send them out to play soccer. Life is tough. You can't shoot they're not going to let you shoot the ball into the other goal. Really, really simple, right? Mm-hmm. Climb the tree. Oh, I know mothers don't like boys and girls climbing trees, but my kids did, and they fell out of them a lot. Right? But life will teach them the lessons. We have to allow life to teach them the lessons. If we protect them from every little spoonful of dirt they're going to eat and every difficulty they're going to have, they become coddled, helicoptered children who cannot make a decision for themselves. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm maybe blowing it out of proportion a little bit, but how is it that we actually learn to hurt our children? So hurt now is different than harm. We're not harming. We don't want to harm our child, but we want them to stub their toes so they realize that they can't do that. Mm-hmm. We want them to experience, they want them to fall down when they walk to realize that it hurts to fall down. I want to say standing up. We want to have progressively allow these little hurts in their life. But most people, I say, your job is to hurt your children. They think I've lost my mind. And of course you don't intentionally hurt them, but Sarah, we got to allow kids to explore the world, to be inquisitive, to learn, to grow, to be challenged by things, and to endure and to embrace and to reach for those challenges.
Yes. It's interesting because I told Rory that I read that to Rory, and we were both talking about what we thought that meant. And he translated it to mean kind of what you're saying about like letting him fall and letting him do his thing and explore. And I translated it more to being like, as parents, we need to show our wholeness as humans, and that not to pretend like everything's fine all the time. So it was interesting because it seems like it's basically both of those things, to show our wholeness and then also to let so we each had part of it.
Both are true. That's why it's really good for parents, for children to have parents.
Yes.
Because parents are going to be different.
Yeah.
Right. And the mothers are going to say, "Stay out of the tree." The fathers are going to say, "Climb the tree."
I know Rory's like holding him upside down and like doing like he plays with him in such a different way, and I'm always like, I can't watch this. Yeah. Like, no. But it's just like they do their own thing, and I'm like, I just need to leave the room while they're like roughhousing.
And Jax is going like, "This is great.
He's in heaven. He loves it."
Sure. That's right. It's fantastic. Life is to be lived fully. It is not to be lived in the shadows of shrinking and being our small selves. And I'm not talking, by the way, about having to change the world. You might just change your neighborhood or change one relationship or have a very small sphere of influence. It's being the best, that virtuous, loving, gracious, kind, courageous person in the middle of whatever circumstance you've been placed in can lead to the deeply satisfying life. And if it leads to some grandiose thing, fantastic, right? But it certainly does not have to. Because really, people who change the world, it's the hand that rocks the cradle still rules the world.
Yes. Do you have a daily wellness practice, like something that you're doing every day that's non-negotiable?
Quiet.
How long?
Contemplation, reflection. People do not need to know to do what I've done. I almost hesitate to say, because in the last 30 or so years, somewhere between 30 minutes and, almost embarrassed to say, 3 to 4 hours. I will get up very early, but the more difficult times of life need more difficult sorting. And kids are young, and challenges with marriage and business is going crazy, and you require more quiet time, and people take less.
Yeah,
it's very important from a functional perspective that we think well, so that we can do the right things, rather than just doing things right. Very important that we choose well, because we have choice, but now we want to choose well. So what's that grounding place? And if we take a look at the research on contemplation, on meditation, on reflection, on quiet, journaling, all of these various practices, and different spiritual practices will be different for different behavior sets. For example, you being more of a creative, reflective introvert may find drawing or sketching or sculpting or journaling or music more grounding, more connecting, that vibrational resonance in music and so on. That might really settle well for you and feel like a very grounding thing. Okay, so for others, it's going to be a walking contemplation. I know I got one guy who can't have a meditative experience until he is riding his bike in traffic. Super ADHD, high energy, cannot quiet his thought unless all of the attentional focus is taken up. So it's going to be different for everyone. But when you find out what that is for you and work down to that sense of that connective experience, the research kind of tells us that our brain has a way of re-leveling and healing itself. And isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
So this is why, and again, take a look through history. I'm not the only guy saying this. I certainly wasn't the first and won't be the last. Find some way of reflection, of contemplation, of a way to have that engaged, connective, transcendent experience. For those who have religious experience, it matches those. For those who don't, it matches. And to be honest, the purpose for people's lives, whether theists or atheists, not actually that much different, right? At the end of the day, I mean, we could talk more about that, but the reality is we are all sharing this human experience. We all come down to exploring our identity and wanting to live in harmony with that virtuous sense of self that could then be fully expressed in the world in this connective experience called life.
Well, gosh, if I can't think of a better way to end this, so I think that's got to be the way to tie this whole conversation up. That was beautiful.
Thank you. Sarah, you are a delight. I was so excited to see your picture of your son, Jax. And please give my warm regards to Rory. And the only disappointment is that I don't live a little closer to LA and can't come out and hang out with you and Blake and all that group very often.
I know. I so value you and your time. So thank you for taking the moment out of your day to connect with me. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, it has been my great pleasure, and perhaps we'll have a chance to do it again.
Would love that. I'd love that. And everyone check out Made For and 3 Big Questions. Do you have any requests of the audience?
Well, the only thing I could add is I have an online course that walks people through the book. So why don't I send you the link for that? Maybe you can put it in the notes as well, because it's just a little course that walks people through. And I'm just doing videos, and there's worksheets and all of that stuff to even make it simpler and sort of smaller steps, 4 or 5 minute videos, that sort of thing.
Perfect.
Yeah.
No, great.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
I'll send you one other thing too. I just did people just have a stomach for the values. Yeah, I wrote this thing called the Values Game.
Ooh. Oh no, you sent that to me.
Oh, did I send it to you? Sure. Post that, and that just maybe.
Oh, am I able to post that?
People. Absolutely.
Oh, great. It was wonderful. It's like kind of an abridged version of the book, right?
Yeah, it's just a boiled down version to really maybe build an appetite for the deeper purpose, mission, vision work.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So you feel free to distribute that as you wish.
Awesome. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Sarah.
Stay healthy and safe over there. Up there, I should say.
I am, and I thank you for that.
All right. Take care. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. For more information on School Your Soul, visit us at schoolyoursoulpodcast.com and connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at School Your Soul. Also, I love to hear from you guys, so send me an email and say hi. Let me know what you're struggling with or what you'd like to learn more about, or even who you'd like me to interview next. My email is schoolyoursoul@gmail.com. And thank you so much for those of you who have reached out and shared your appreciation for the show. It really means a lot. I'm so grateful to every single listener out there. That's all for today. Namaste.